Hi, everybody. So, representation. Why is it important? Well, let's see. Let's start from a place that possibly doesn't exist. Um, let's take the planet Mars, which does exist. Let's pretend that Mars is inhabited by green octopi. That's that's the civilization over there. That's what they look like. They have 8 tentacles, but otherwise, they have TVs. They have Broadway. They have plumbers, you name it. I mean, there is water there. If there's octopi, there has to be water there. Anyway, and then maybe you go over and you live on Mars among the octopi. So you're one of the only or one of the few of your kind. So let's say that, and I know you're like, oh God, this is, yeah, I know. Just go with the journey for a minute. I will get to my point, which I'm sure you know where I'm going. So you watch TV, you watch movies, you try to buy skin products, whatever it is you try to do, you try to get around like an octopi would. And it's not the same experience exactly. Some stuff it is. You can relate to a TV show about, this octopi and his wife, and they are arguing and they have other little kids. There's relatable material, but you never see anyone in any form of entertainment like yourself. At a certain point, you might feel left out. It's not that you can't enjoy the content, of course you can. But at some point, it's going to feel lonely to be the only one of your kind, to be a unicorn. So I guess this is about unicorns. Um, think about it. To not have anything you can relate to, it's difficult. It's not impossible. It's not that it's not doable. Unless you're someone who loves looking in the mirror all the time and you need to have something that looks exactly like you everywhere all the time, then maybe you wouldn't survive very well. But to not have anything represented of who you are, what you look like, how you do things, what you eat, what you don't eat, whatever it is, well, that I can speak to that becomes tricky. And so representation is more important than people will realize. Now, if basically you're represented for the most part, maybe it's not 100%, but you're represented, well, you possibly wouldn't realize that you're being left out. Because if you're not being left out, you're like the kid who's like, high school was awesome. Well, if you were the popular kid and had a ton of friends and never got bullied, and sure, but if that was not your experience, high school might not be such a fond memory. So it's all about, do you get to see yourself reflected elsewhere? Are you able to get your needs met easily? Then this video isn't about you, or it might be and you just don't realize it yet. But it's to speak about the issue in general, but specifically about people with disabilities who are so underrepresented in entertainment, let alone anywhere else, but especially entertainment. Because when you think about it, when you turn on a TV show or a movie, when do you see someone that's disabled? I mean, who are they normally playing if you do? Are they maybe the grandmother? Or maybe, okay, someone was in the hospital and they're a patient. If they are represented, I mean, what do they do for a living? Or what role do they play? Or are they the special needs sibling or child? Like someone who's been in an accident, we're going to tell their story. But it's like a one-time thing on a show. There's not a deep investment on characters with disabilities. And then onto that, the people who play the part of the person with the disability, most times is not someone with a disability. Now, I'm not saying, let me make this very clear, I'm not saying that an able-bodied actor cannot play someone with a disability. I'm not saying that. Is there a difference between blackface and yellowface and someone who's able-bodied playing someone with a disability? Well, yes, there is a difference, but at the same time, it's not too far off, depending on the situation. And I'll get to that in a moment. So, representation means normalization. The problem is if you don't have one of me on every block in every town, you're really not getting exposed to people with disabilities. So then what would you know about people with disabilities? Only what you've heard people say or how people are portrayed. Even when it comes to something not related to disability at all, excuse me, hair products, for example. Growing up, I have curly hair, and it's not a product promotion. The girl who had the clean, beautiful hair, she could do this, and the straight hair would fall down in place perfectly. And that was clean, beautiful hair. I never saw anyone color, I never saw anyone with curly hair be able to shake their hair and have it fall into place. I never really saw much in dark hair. I would see more to do with blondes. I never saw a person of color on there. It became more of a niche thing every once in a while, but you really wouldn't see curly hair. And that was a little bit difficult. It wasn't a big tragedy in my life, but I started to think my hair, maybe it should be straight. I remember brushing it because that's what beauty was supposed to be. And everybody and his brother saying to me, you look really good with straight hair. I liked my hair. I didn't for a while because the world told me not to like it. So now imagine when you don't see yourself represented in a bigger way, whether it's because of your color, your religious background, your gender, whatever it is. If you don't see yourself, how can you not feel left out of the picture and left out of the picture of what society is supposed to actually look like? So, fun when dry throat issues act up. It is what it is. So now when we talk about how do we get people to be represented on TV? Okay, well, there's got to be someone out there who goes, it would be a great idea. Let's put on someone on TV who's in a wheelchair. Unfortunately, it doesn't go the way someone like me would love it to be represented. Like I said, it's usually someone that's in a submissive, infantile role. There's not usually the mom who's the head of the house, or a single mom, or a lawyer. You're not seeing that kind of role. Nothing that someone goes, when I grow up, well, that's what I want to be. That's not normally the representation. So it does start to become a trending thing, whether it's let's put someone who's Black on TV and let's make them maybe a supporting character. Now let's make them a lead character, but it's usually always the story of their struggle because they're Black. And then there's usually a white person that's going to give them an opportunity to help them out of the struggle. Well, people with disabilities have this similar storyline. It's usually that it's not the main role. It's usually about their struggle. And there's usually some able-bodied person that's yelling at them, trying to get them to do what they're supposed to do and not to give up and to stop being so depressed. And it's like, That is not every minute of my day, okay? And why is it that I have to have this person yelling at me to make me want to do something with my life? I'm not saying that this is never a true scenario ever, but it's not always the scenario. And the problem is that a lot of people feel an entitlement that they should tell people with disabilities what to do and to have hope when it's not necessary. It's a weird thing that happens where people project onto you their own insecurities, and they want to see hope in you. And it's a little bit of a dicey situation to be in because, people often mean well. But what they don't understand is all these different negative stereotypes that are represented all over the place. That's what they're repeating. So we're all really not growing and getting to normalize people with disabilities. So now moving forward, do you have some representation now versus even 5 years ago, 10 years ago? Oh, well, yes. Not a lot, though. It's not a lot. And there are some shows that do a good job with it, and there's some shows that I just can't. I do want to try and maybe watch some of these shows and do a review. There was a show called Speechless, and I did make an attempt to watch it, but immediately I got turned off because it showed me that behind the scenes in the writer's room with producers and so on, I did not get the impression, and I could be wrong, but I didn't get the impression that there was the proper diversity behind the scenes, because there was a scene where they joked about the fact that the kid was in diapers. And quite honestly, why does that even need to be a part of the story at all? Just why? If anything, it emasculates this teen boy. It's a negative stereotype that's used against everybody who's ever in a wheelchair. Not everyone has this problem. Not every person who's a senior citizen has this problem. But it's pinned on those two groups. So knowing that it's something that's used to basically sound dramatic, but it's weaponized against people with disabilities often, then why would you include it? So that's why I say I have a feeling that either there weren't people with disabilities in the writer's room, or there wasn't anyone with enough power to go, you got to take that joke out. It just is offensive and bothersome. And why does it have to? You could do better. Be clever. It doesn't mean you can't push boundaries and talk about these subjects, but why do you have to go there? It's the easy go-to of a negative stereotype. And I'm not saying never go to any stereotypes. Stereotypes are based on truths, but to perpetuate the negative ones, no good. So that's part of the thing is, okay, if you have the show, is the show good? Is it a good representation? Does everybody want to watch it? Are people learning from it? Are people feeling good seeing themselves represented that way? Because what's going to happen is everyone else around you is going to look to you based on that person and go, oh, so this is what okay. So you do this, you wear diapers. This is like, they're going to look at that character as a template for who anyone they run into that's disabled is. So, and this is whether it's your ethnic background, whether you're a female, whether it's your religious background, whatever's represented, anyone who knows nothing about that world is going to use that as a manual for who you are. So that's why there's a responsibility, especially when you have a pioneering character or a pioneering show. It's okay to show the struggle, sure. I mean, I think struggles are important to talk about, but if it's the only thing and we're leaning into the negative stereotypes, I don't know. I don't think it's clever. And I think it's, personally, I think it's lazy writing. I just think, just look at who people actually are. Now, a show that, in my opinion, is doing a very good job at it is Superstore on NBC. Uh, the guy who he plays someone paralyzed in a wheelchair, he's a comedian in real life. He pulls off the performance really well. And quite honestly, I don't see any of that stereotypical typical writing for him. I just don't. It's he's just like any other. He's just like anyone else. You know, if I didn't know he was disabled, I wouldn't know the character was disabled. Like it's that kind of thing. Now, on a rare occasion, do they reference something? Yes, there are a few things, but it's more the, yeah, this is what I go through, and we all laugh against the situation, but he's never the butt of the joke when it comes to his disability. So this is good. To me, this means, well, somebody is either in the writer's room or the writers are doing their research and really just asking around, because I've done writing before where it's not any background I come from. And the first thing I do is I come up with the scene and the people and what I think should happen, what I think the joke should be. I research everything to death, every aspect of it. And then I go and I talk to many different people that are from that background and go, so what do you think? Does this ring true? What would be is there anything offensive in here? Because you have to do that. If it's, I've had gigs in the past where I was asked to write a scene that I have no relationship to that world, but I had to find it. And a lot of writers make the mistake of thinking, oh, just some good writing will take care of it. No, no matter what it is, you have to do your research. If you're going to write a show about doctors in a hospital, well, you better research, what do doctors in a hospital do? Otherwise it's not going to ring true, and you're going to get everything wrong, and you're going to be putting a lot of misinformation out. And I believe, whether it's fiction or not, whatever form of entertainment, believe it or not, people learn from these things. I know people go, well, it's fiction, it doesn't matter. It kind of does, because people go and quote that stuff and say, no, 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 I actually learned that there are octopi on Mars. So there aren't, as far as I know. You can ask Neil deGrasse Tyson. I'm sure he'll know. Now, when it comes to the actor portraying that character on Superstore, well, he's not really disabled. I mean, from a casting point of view, if we were only to talk about the acting, he's excellent. I mean, I would have cast him. But me personally, forget that I'm in a wheelchair. Let's forget that. I still personally would rather there's as much authenticity as possible, and that's something I do try to make an effort on. There are so many actors with disabilities out there. I'm not sure why an actor with a disability couldn't have been chosen. I mean, he's there. I can't unsee him being there. So I don't want his character replaced. They have added someone who definitely is a person with a disability, and this is good, you know? But it should have started off that way in the first place. I don't want to see him taken away now. I do, you bond to the people you see on TV, so I can't undo it in my mind. Now it would feel wrong. But like I said, there are so many performers out there that are just not given the opportunity, because people are under the impression that if someone in a wheelchair is going, or whatever disability is going to be in a movie, a show, a play, whatever it is, that has to be written for that. It doesn't. I was a single mother. Why can't I portray one? I just happen to be in a wheelchair. you know, these two things can exist at once. Just because it wasn't, I mean, now if I was a rock climber, yeah, don't, you know, if my character's that, well, then obviously I'm the wrong choice to cast, you know, although with today's CGI, you know, more is possible. But the bottom line is, you know, there's a part of it that has to make sense. I could see casting someone able-bodied in a disabled character role if we are showing before and after the accident. Then, you know, they're running, they're jumping, they're wrestling, they're doing all of this physical stuff, which, again, you know, if you have someone who's a disabled performer with a disability, who's an A-lister, well, shoot, I mean, you know, the special effects will be fine. You can now cast them in that role. There is a certain truth to names hold power. So that's often why you have an able-bodied actor playing a disabled character, because they need someone with a name. So I understand that, but if you're not going to start letting people in through the gates who do have disabilities, you're not going to have anyone that works their way up to being the A-lister, and then you're not going to be able to use that card to sell your film, your TV show, whatever. So that's part of the issue in the movie with Bryan Cranston and Kevin Smith? No, not Kevin Smith. Oh my God, I love that comedian and I can't remember his name right now. But anyway, Bryan Cranston plays a man in a wheelchair, and he hires a gentleman to take care of him, who of course has to yell at him and tell him to stop feeling sorry for himself and all that. So, you know, Bryan Cranston was great in it. But if it weren't for the necessity of the names on the poster, anybody could have played that role and it would have been great. It could have had one A-lister. I mean, quite honestly, it could have. But they were going to bring, you know, different audiences. So the more A-list names you have there, the more audience you are getting. So the bottom line is, for now, there's going to be a mixture of able-bodied people playing these roles until more people get in there and can play actual disabled people with disabilities. I've got to really retrain. I'm from that generation where it was disabled people, and the term became people with disabilities. I think it's now differently abled. And just like everyone, it's hard to get with the new names, and you would think I of all people would be good at this. Anywho, the only way change occurs is by us recognizing that there's an issue out there and understanding why it is an issue, and that you're not giving people a chance to show what they have, you know, what skills and talents they have. So why should there be all of these actors, all of these singers, all of these dancers who have disabilities that don't get to use those talents and skills? Like, it shouldn't just be for community theater or for putting on a play for people in the neighborhood. That's not fair, because that's not equality. You know, if I'm able to use a curb cut, use a ramp so I can go and be a part of the world, you know, if people can get hired as a lawyer, whatever, then why can't someone be an actor, a dancer, you know, whatever performer with a disability, and be given an equal opportunity to be represented? Because that benefits everybody on both sides. It benefits the audience, who gets to learn something by exposure and just get used to that image, that's not just someone that's put in an institution, which is the way we were viewed. You know, we're in the nursing home, all of this business, or we're not competent, we can't. It starts to break those negative stereotypes by seeing all of us everywhere and not feeling afraid of us, not feeling like, you know, need to infantilize us. It's a thing that happens. Like, you can drive? Good for you. You know, you start to get talked to like that. Imagine if someone talked to you like that. I mean, I'm never nasty to people when they do. I'm not saying everybody's nice when they're talked to that way, but the more representation that there is, the less people will talk down to you or be surprised at what you're able to do. In this day and age of self-parking and self-driving cars, why are people surprised that I'm able to drive? And a big part of that is there's not the representation in entertainment to teach people that. I know it sounds silly and far-fetched in a certain way, but think about it. If you don't see it, if you don't learn it in school, you don't see it on TV, you don't see it in a movie, in a stage play, where are you learning about something if you're not seeing it somewhere? If you're only hearing the rumors about something, what are you actually going to believe? And then you're going to try and fill in the blanks. So this is part of why representation is super important. It educates society as a whole. It gives people chances to have equality. It's, gives jobs to people. And, it just makes the world a better place. So I would love to hear what shows you might want to, or movies you'd like me to give my opinion on. I am thinking of doing some reaction videos to shows and movies that have had disability representation. There are some fun ones out there. So I'd love to hear your comments on the subject, questions, and show suggestions. Thank you so much, everybody, and talk to you soon. Gotta learn how to get to this button faster.